Hello, I'm Darren Jaffrey, Hire Views General Manager for EMEA. Welcome to the very first episode of Hire Thinking, a brand new video series collaboration with the RL100, where I get to interview some of the most influential talent acquisition leaders from the world's biggest brands. In this first episode, I'm really looking forward to interviewing John Hull, taking a look back over his career, diving into some of the secrets of his success. But first, I have a tube to catch. John, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you
Great
for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Quite an auspicious location, being at the BBC Television Centre for the first of these video interviews. Before we get into your career, looking backwards and then looking forwards as well, just a few quick fire icebreakers which we use to with all of our guests. So, morning coffee chat or afternoon happy hour?
Has to be happy hour.
Work from home or work from the office? Very topical.
Home.
Hire for experience or hire for potential?
Potential.
Best in class benefits or unmatched company culture?
Culture.
Good answers. Let's kick off. Let's go all the way back to the start if we can. Where did you start your career, and how and why did you get into the field of talent acquisition?
Like most people in the job that I do, fell into recruitment back in the early 90s. Recruitment agency. I previously to that, I was a tennis coach, having left university, and that was never going to be a long-term option. So I had to find a proper job, inverted commas, and register with some recruitment agencies, the normal thing, and ended up, you might be the right fit for a recruitment agency job. Spent probably 9-10 years in recruitment agencies, and then ultimately got into the RPO world with Alexander Mann, and then never looked back really. Okay,
and from RPO then went into the corporate world, and just take us through some of the corporate brands that you've worked for.
So
I've worked on some of those later.
So I've worked for Electrocomponents PLC, which is probably better known as RS Components as their trading name, who are a high-tech distribution business for engineers. Then moved to Sodexo, then Carillion, who are a construction outsourcing business, and then latterly Nationwide, and currently Principality Building Society. Okay,
so a few industries in there: financial services, bit of facilities management as well, things like that. The formative years spent as a recruiter, and do you carry a lot of that forward in terms of learnings to the corporate world? I mean, it's an often trodden path into our industry, but they are slightly different worlds.
I think they are. I think good grounding in sales never hurts anybody. Number one, I think that gets you to understand the commercial pressures, and you get to learn about lots of different businesses and industries and the pressures or not that they face around talent. Downside is you only ever get to see about a third of the whole process, really, the upfront bit, which I know for recruitment agents is frustrating, and equally probably for the people on the other side of the fence. But I think a great grounding in that you have to be resilient, you have to understand needs ultimately of a client, and if you don't, you fail, and you have to build relationships with candidates, clients, and the interaction between the two.
All good skills to carry forward, I would suggest. So rolling forward a bit, when I was looking at your profile, I noticed that you were recently named one of the top 11 most influential recruiters by Recruiter magazine. I chuckled with the 11. I wonder why anybody would pick a top 11, but there you go. I'm sure there's a good reason behind that. But the award itself, when it was describing, you talked about your work at Nationwide, and particularly focused on a big leap you made in diverse outcomes for the graduate and tech programs, with, I think, at the end of your tenure, literally a 50-50 split between male and female hiring, of which 35% were ethnically diverse hires, which is, better than the norm, we should say, in our industry, and we should all aspire to be there. Can you talk us through some of the work that you did when you were at Nationwide and the challenges you're trying to solve?
Yeah, so I mean, taking that specifically, you know, early talent is an entry point and probably one of the biggest levers to pull around inclusion and diversity outcomes, because it's not based on experience. There's not as many barriers. Well, there could be, but not if you get it right. And I think for Nationwide, with its social purpose, and I'm guessing lots of other industries too, it's a big topic at the moment, and really understanding that inclusion piece in its broadest sense. So it's, yes, the headline figures, if you like, are about the characteristics, but it is reaching a broader cross-section of the population. The Nationwide social purpose is rooted in serving, you know, its members and the cross-section of society that represents. So that, you know, that was the starting point of that project. How do we go about that then? And it's looking at what are the crucial elements of a graduate and apprentice or the tech development program hiring, and is that, you know, the question goes back to, is that rooted in a particular degree or university or skill set, you know? And if the answer to that is no, because when you really probe, of course there are managers who say, I want graduates in finance from Manchester University, or, you know, add in, insert the blanks. That is just ultimately bias, right? Because they went there or because they've had a good experience of that. If you can broaden that talent pool, and you give yourself a better chance, right? Then you need the right tools to be able to assess for what will be successful in Nationwide around potential. What we tested was potential, learning agility, which is, you know, the ability to learn quickly and acquire new skills quickly, and an element of fitting into the organisation in terms of a culture add rather than culture fit. But, you know, certainly there wouldn't be an organ rejection of that personality type or ability. Then you can start to assess for that, which ultimately led to better candidate experience in the sense that they could take these tests any time of choosing, and it was relevant to the job. So it was relevant to the brand and relevant to the job. So they could see imagery and video of people talking about the roles within Nationwide and what it looked like and felt like. And they could take those assessments, you know, on their phone at a time of their choosing.
What about the dialogue that you're having with the hiring managers who were still, well, I'd still like somebody with a finance degree from Manchester, thanks very much. How did they change their opinions over time?
So I think there's goes back to those core skills you learn maybe in recruitment agency or elsewhere, right? Is stakeholder engagement, involvement, and influence. So the, you know, discussions start way before that process. You know, we didn't do it to them. We took those stakeholders on the journey with us to say, look, what does good look like? What are the things that actually make a difference in this particular role or area, or you know wherever, and help them design that part of it. So, you know, when you really get to when you start to probe underneath the skin of that hiring manager or department, you know, most of the things someone mentions in a new recruit are nothing to do with experience or skill necessarily. It's often about attitude, or often about, you know, motivation, and especially in that early talent area, because really they haven't really got any experience. You know, they might have worked in a shop or gone travelling, but that's, you know, kind of by the by in many cases, and also arguably exclusive to a narrow range of folk who are probably more privileged. Indeed.
Any other technologies that specifically you think are prevalent in our industry?
Oh, well, I think more and more. I think you're seeing more will come of, and obviously it's grown over the pandemic, but video interviewing or video tools, both in terms of that assessment engagement piece, but I think now video is, in terms of marketing, outreach, information, both externally to describe your job ads or your culture, or, you know, whatever it is you're trying to raise awareness of, and internally, I think more and more. So I think people want and can access now through their phone or the iPad or whatever, that, okay, I want to hear about a job or a new department, and I might be remote now with the hybrid working. So rather than jumping on the website or having to scroll through pages and pages of intranet, a quick video to target, you know, the same methods should be used internally as well as externally. And more so now, right?
Absolutely.
Retention is going to be arguably more important than recruitment over the coming, years, because there's a limited external pool, right? And for years we've neglected our internal folk at a big cost.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, just from a technology vendor standpoint, we obviously cut our teeth in video interviewing, and it was all candidate focused. Now, the majority of projects that we're talking about are internal mobility.
Yeah.
Because for all the reasons you've just described, that it's the same principles apply, same technology, same return, but it's just looking at it through a slightly different lens, right? And making the most of what you have. Good, thank you. So, post-pandemic, do you see the corporate world looking for new traits, new competencies as a result of that? I mean, the ability to be a self-starter, the ability to work from home. Historically, we'd always be testing for teamwork, which is, an interesting challenge that everyone faces going forward. Hopefully not long term, but there are these new competencies that are required, particularly in the tech world, the tech-driven world that we live in. So, how are companies best to embrace that?
Well, I wonder. I don't think any of that goes away, does it? Because it's just a new way of working. So you still going to need to work in teams or collaborate, shall we say? I think there's probably something in the hybrid world around resilience.
Yep.
It is having to work alone, arguably for sort of longer periods than you would previously. But I also think there's a challenge for organisations is how do you bring on early talent without the informal learning, right? So there, this hybrid, it should be hybrid and choice, but how are organisations more mindful about bringing, inexperienced talent on and giving them those opportunities to socialise, experiential stuff as well as giving them tasks to do, right? But I think that's not beyond the wit of intelligent leaders, right?
No.
And emotionally intelligent leaders. That's the crucial thing, I think.
No, it's such an important. We forget when you get to my age, not yours, obviously, but you look back that period when you're bringing your graduates or your interns or your early careers folks through, work becomes an integral part of their social life. It is their social life, actually. It's post university, it's post college, it's post wherever they've been. That I worry for them a little bit going forward, and the firms have got to find a way to make sure that inclusion still exists, right? Because it's important. You touched on something there, resilience, which is interesting. Something that we're focusing on a lot at the moment is agility as well. Just the ability to be more agile, and I think increasingly you're going to see the concept of the agile workforce and agile enterprises actually, and it's not sort of agile in terms of the coding, but they're taking those principles almost into much broader organisations. Now ABN was sort of the figurehead of that in Europe. Do you think your thoughts on agile basically as we go forward?
I think that's right. I think you need to kind of divorce out the buzzword with the reality.
Yep.
And I think lots of leaders talk about agile without knowing what it really is, and is that a kind of Trojan horse for cutting cost or being more lean, right? Maybe, but or is it a route to more productivity? So I think this idea of agility, absolutely, organisations have to be responsive, and able to respond to customer feedback, employee feedback, probably more so now given the Great Resignation.
Yep.
Do they really mean it? Right, that's back to your point earlier. Is after is your brand, are your values actually rooted in what you do, and then can you design work practices that are truly agile? I mean, I'll give you an example of when, we were going through the big change at Nationwide of this, the workplace being, work being a thing you do, not a place you go to. A lot of the inverted commas agile teams said we can't do it because we need people to be in the office for stand-ups. You go, well, your technology teams, right? Surely you have the technology to enable collaboration, right? So is it one thing for leaders and one thing for the rest of the workforce, or do you really mean a truly agile organisation that meets the needs of all employees, not a small section?
How did they fix it?
Well, through discussion and through a bit of, a bit of probing and challenge to say, well, hang on, of course, because we're not used to it, right?
Yeah,
so you'll default to, it doesn't work because of that, and it's like, well, no, it could work because of something else, right? So, I think it's those conversations that need to happen, and I think I think for true agility, we need to start to embrace not just the hybrid working, but different work patterns of people. So, part-time, embracing parents who've got caring responsibilities or other carers. I mean, my head of early careers at Nationwide worked 3 days a week. All of that team were on non-standard hour contracts, right? And still fulfilled. So you can work it out.
Where were you working when the pandemic started?
I was at Nationwide.
You were at Nationwide. So your time there overlapped with, a pretty seismic event in our lives. As my daughter reminds me, we will be an A-level history question in 10 years' time. I mean, it's created the most volatile hiring landscape there's ever been, certainly in our working careers, arguably ever been. What was your experience of it? I mean, everybody's got their COVID stories, but what did it mean for hiring, and how did you navigate it? And is there anything you've learned in that period that you're going to take forward, basically?
Yeah. I'm going to take it in sort of 2 or 3 stages, that one, because I think when it first kicked off, we were, Nationwide, probably, from memory, probably 2 weeks before lockdown was announced by Boris. Everyone that was corporately office-based was sent home to test the kit. Can 13,000 employees work from home at once on the same day, right? Is the bandwidth there? So for 3 days, that I can't remember what week that was, and it was fine. So then they said, well, don't come back in, right? We don't want to kind of put people in danger. And then overnight, sort of post those announcements, we saw obviously just a drop off in hiring, right? Because everyone got, rightly so, sort of a bit panicked, didn't know what was coming. Quite quickly, certainly in the tech space, it bounced back to about 90% of where we thought it was going to be anyway. So that never really went away after the first sort of 3-4 weeks, which on hindsight was really a good thing. Now, I don't know whether that was a conscious decision of the organisation but that helped massively as we came through to, 3, 4, 5 months ago, when that big uptick in recruitment across the whole economy hit, because we weren't then trying to catch up. Now clearly there's still going to be factors in that tech recruitment for Nationwide, the same as everybody else. But I think, so the hindsight is don't panic, in that sense. We saw a drop off in the customer hiring, retail branches, customer contact centres, all of that. Basically because we not closed the branches, but shortened the hours. We mobilised 3/4 of the contact centre staff to home base within 10 weeks, which unheard of before. So when I joined, it was over my dead body, would we have anybody in a contact centre role working from home, right? So within 3 months, everybody that wanted to be working from home was working from home. That's really interesting, right? Because that then becomes about trust. And I think that's the thing to learn is, regardless of where your people work, do you trust them? Have you hired the right people? Do you trust them to do the job? Have they got the tools to do the job and all of that? And guess what? Obviously, attrition dropped hugely now. Clearly, there was a factor in the pandemic, but it's picked up. I think, I don't know. It's picked up a bit, but not to where it was. Well, guess what? Because people can pick up the kids from school, go to the gym after work, more readily, and productivity peaked for a period and then flattened, but it didn't drop. So, I think what holds organisations back, perversely, is often the leaders don't catch up with what their workforce is thinking. So I think there's a lot of learnings is listen to the people that work with you, listen to what they're actually saying and their needs, worries, concerns. Some you will be able to address, some you won't, because there's operational necessities that you need to drive. But if you treat them like adults, most people get it. It's coming back to this old-fashioned command and control isn't going to cut it for most people, right? We've got a relatively highly educated, workforce. We've got people who've, different ages in that workforce. And guess what? Everyone goes on about Gen Zs and millennials. Everyone wants to be treated with dignity and treated like an adult. Guess what? That's not generational. That's called being human, right?
That's fundamental.
Yeah.
So talking about in-house recruiters, as we did then, we wanted to have the odd controversial question. So discuss this one. Do you think in-house recruiters practice what they preach when recruiting for their own teams?
No, definitely not. You've taken that out of my blog, haven't you?
I might have taken it out of your blog.
I think we're like cobbler's children, right? So I think classic and in-house teams, I'm saying corporate in-house teams, not, for years we've been the beneficiary of agency recruiters, RPOs who have sort of learnt their trade, cut their teeth in those organisations, good organisations, and then come through into the in-house world. We've done very little. There are some examples, and and they are examples by exception rather than the rule of graduate hires or early careers hires or apprentices that we haven't managed to get our arms around. And I think it's really important as the in-house profession. There's always a kind of conversation as we want a seat at the table, we want all of this, whatever that table is. So therefore we have to practice what we're preaching to our hiring managers and internally in HR, right? So how do we hire for potential? How do we train these folk, give them the skills and the opportunities to grow within a function and make them more rounded? And because otherwise, we will be in this situation, in this, this volatile situation, as you say, but we'll be in this for some time to come unless we do more with that array of talent that is out there that could transfer into in-house, right?
If I could, if I should or could interview one person in talent acquisition next as part of this series, who do you think should be?
Oh, there's a lot out there. I think, I would say Kath Possamay of now Amazon, but the work she did with the army has been really interesting, and the pathway that's gone on from being a really difficult client for Capita as she was to now, to a headline kind of success story, and it was, really, hard work, but some really innovative stuff going on.
So, final question, if I may, John. The title of this video series is Higher Thinking. What would be your one golden rule for the future of talent acquisition?
I don't think it's just the future. I think it, for successful talent acquisition, we should be rooted in this anyway, but is really understand the dynamics of the business. If you don't understand the commercial thinking, operation and execution, you can't be successful in TA because you can't get in the shoes of those managers that desperately need your help.
Let's end on that high note. Thank you very much for your time today. Really
Thank
enlightening.
you.
Really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
That concludes our first episode of Higher Thinking. A big thank you to John for his time. We look forward to welcoming you back in the ongoing series as we talk to some of the most influential talent acquisition leaders in the industry. We'll see you next time.